The hidden truth about slavery before the European. We are taught that slavery was a unique and monstrous evil born from the depths of European racial hatred. But that story, while true, is only a fraction of a much larger and far more complex human history. Kindly subscribe to this channel for more mind-blowing and historical videos like this. Today, we're not just looking at the transatlantic slave trade. We're going back thousands of years to uncover a hidden truth that slavery is an institution as old as civilization itself. The version you know is just the final, most brutal chapter of a story that began in the dawn of time. Get ready to have your understanding of one of humanity's oldest evils completely rewritten. The hidden truth about slavery before the European. Hello everyone. When we hear the word slavery, a specific and terrible image often comes to mind. The transatlantic slave trade, the brutal plantations of the Americas, and the horrific chattel slavery system that defined a person as nothing more than property. We are conditioned to see slavery as a uniquely European evil, a crime born of racial hatred. But the hidden truth is, the institution of slavery is far older than the European empires. It existed across every continent and in countless cultures for thousands of years, long before the first European ship ever sailed to Africa. Today, I want to take you back in time to explore the hidden and complex history of slavery before the age of European colonization. By understanding what slavery was, we can better grasp how it was fundamentally transformed and weaponized by the West. Slavery in ancient civilizations. Let's begin in the cradles of civilization. In ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, and China, slavery was a common feature of society, but it operated on a completely different set of principles. It wasn't about race, it was about status and circumstance. Slaves were often prisoners of war, or people who were enslaved to pay off a debt they could not settle. The laws of the ancient world, like the famous Code of Hammurabi, didn't just regulate the ownership of slaves, they also outlined their rights. Slaves could own property, engage in commerce, and even marry free citizens. Their enslavement wasn't a life sentence for their children. Their offspring were often born free. This form of slavery was a harsh social reality, but it was not a permanent, dehumanizing caste system based on skin color. It was an institution built on conquest and economics, not on the concept of racial inferiority. Slavery in pre-colonial Africa. Yes, slavery existed in Africa long before the Europeans arrived. It's a fact that is often exploited to downplay the atrocities of the transatlantic trade, but it's a critical part of the historical truth. Across different kingdoms and empires, from the Mali Empire to the Congo Kingdom, various forms of servitude existed. However, the nature of this slavery was distinctly different from the European model. It was often a form of indentured servitude, or a way to absorb people into a new community. Slaves were typically captives from rival tribes, criminals, or people who were enslaved to settle a debt they could not settle. They were not seen as disposable property. Instead, they could be integrated into the family and social structure. They could hold positions of power, marry into the family they served, and their children were almost always born free. In many ways, this system was more akin to feudalism or bonded labor than the brutal chattel slavery that would later be imposed. It was a fluid social status, not a permanent state of being. The fundamental shift. So, what changed? Why did an ancient, widespread practice of servitude suddenly become the racialized, genocidal institution we are most familiar with? The answer lies in the massive demand for labor in the newly colonized Americas. European powers, driven by the insatiable need for workers on sugar, tobacco, and cotton plantations, needed a massive, permanent, and controllable labor force. They didn't just tap into the existing African system, they fundamentally corrupted and transformed it. The European model was unique because it was hereditary and racialized. It wasn't about debt or war, it was about defining an entire group of people as subhuman, as property to be bought and sold forever, based solely on the color of their skin. This new form of slavery stripped individuals of their name, their family, their history, and their humanity. It created a permanent, inescapable caste system that would have devastating and lasting effects for centuries to come. Understanding the history of slavery before the Europeans is not about excusing or minimizing the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade. It's about gaining a more complete and accurate picture of human history. It reminds us that the concept of slavery has evolved over time, taking on different forms and serving different purposes. It highlights how a pre-existing practice of servitude was hijacked, twisted, and weaponized into a brutal, race-based system that left a permanent scar on the world. By knowing the full story, we can better understand the complex legacy of this institution and the enduring struggles for equality and justice today.